Hi everyone, my name is Satyarth Shree and today I will be teaching you what is ROS2 and how you can start using it. Basically, this is our first video of ROS2 tutorial series. Here we will discuss about the basics of ROS2, the very basics of ROS2 and how you can start uh, studying it or how you can start using it. So first we will, without wasting your time, I will first dive deep into what is ROS2. Hmm. So there are some basic things that you must know before starting ROS2, and I will be explaining those ones here, like ROS2. So basically, what is ROS2? When I started studying ROS2, I used to confuse it by I used to confuse I was confused and I thought that it is a programming language or it is a kind of an app, but it is neither a programming language nor it is an app. Uh, the most technically accurate framework to describe it is that it is a middleware. So the most technically accurate term for ROS2 is it is a middleware. It is neither a programming language nor a app. It is a middleware. What do I mean by middleware? For example, like whenever we are making a robot, for let's suppose whenever we are making a robot, uh, we have both the parts software and hardware and software. The main challenge is we have both the hardware part and the software part of a robot. Hardware is the physical things that you can see, while software is coded inside the hardware on a microcontroller or a microprocessor, so that the robot can function for the purpose which it is designed for. So to establish connection between these two, uh, ROS2 was ROS2 was invented. Basically, by middleware itself means that it acts as a bridge between the hardware and software components of a robot. This is what a middleware stands for. So it is basically helps us establish communication between the hardware and software parts of a robot. Now, by middle and the second thing that you should know about ROS2 is since it is not a programming language and it is a language agnostic platform. Or I should say language agnostic middleware. Language agnostic middleware. By language agnostic, I means that you are not restricted to any single language if you want to use ROS2. The most prominent languages that are used in ROS2 are Python and C++. These are the most prominent languages. Language agnostic basically means a middleware in which multiple languages can be used. So far, the most widest community support is for Python and for C++. So these are the two most popular languages which are used in ROS2. If in future the library for some other languages will be made, then we can also use some other languages like Node.js, JavaScript, or some other language. But so far, the libraries of these two languages are most prominent in ROS2. Now, now you need to know you need to know what is the preferred operating system for ROS2. The most preferred operating system is Linux. Linux is considered the tier 1 operating system for ROS2. ROS2 was basically made in Linux only, and later it was adapted for Mac OS and Windows. But since it was natively made in Linux, so I would recommend that you should have Linux installed in your laptop or system, whatever you are using, to use ROS2. It is available for Windows and Mac OS also, but the tier 1 and the most recommended software is Linux. These are the some basic things that you should know about ROS2. That the first one is that it is a neither an programming language, it is not an app, it is basically a middleware. The second thing that you should know is that it is a language agnostic middleware, which means multiple languages can be used. So far, the libraries for Python and C++ have the most community support. So Python and C++ are used, and the most preferred operating system for this for ROS2 is Linux. ROS2 basically stands for Robot Operating System. Here R stands for robot, O stands for operating, and S stands for system. But it is technically speaking, it is not an operating system. It is basically a middleware, though it is named or operating system because it helps us greatly when we are making high-end robots. But it is basically a middleware, not an operating system. This is a thing that you should remember. And it is a language agnostic middleware. The most preferred software is Linux. Now, if you are watching, most probably most of you are watching this video in Windows, and you might not have Linux dual booted in your system. If you have Linux dual booted in your system, then well and good. If not, then you have to first dual boot your system into Linux. Uh, there is a I would recommend you I will show you the link of a video which you can use while which you can use to dual boot your system. For example, let's this is an article which I have written. Uh, See this video. I will share the link of this video. I have also
Most beginners make this mistake. They either choose the wrong hosting or get
see this video. How to dual boot Ubuntu 24.04 LTS and Windows 11. On Windows 11. So this video mainly talks about how you can dual boot your Windows 11 operating system with Ubuntu 24.04. There are various versions of Ubuntu. Uh, this On this version of Ubuntu, which is Ubuntu 24.04, you can install ROS to Jazzy. If you have Ubuntu 22.04, then you can install ROS to Humble. But if you haven't dual booted your operating system, then I would recommend you to dual boot with this version, Ubuntu 24.04. If you already have dual booted and you have Ubuntu 22.04, then you can continue. Then we can use ROS to Humble. I will talk about what is ROS to Humble and ROS to Jazzy in this video. So first, I will share the link of this video in the description of the. I will share the link of this dual boot video in the description of my video. You can watch this video and dual boot your Windows 11 system. All right, now we will talk your first task is to have a legitimate Ubuntu version dual booted with your Windows 11. It can be either Ubuntu 22.04, which supports ROS to Humble, or it should be Ubuntu 24.04. All right. So I will share I have also dual booted my Windows system by watching this video, so I can I can tell you that all the steps in this video are correct. Uh, Now we will talk about what is as I said that ROS2 is basically a middleware, and it has been and the founders means the founders of ROS2 ROS2 is made by a company which is known as OSRF. OSRF stands for Open Source Robotics Foundation. Open source, or you can say Open Robotics. This is the company behind ROS2, and this company founded ROS2, and it is also currently maintaining ROS2. By maintaining ROS2, I mean that since it is a middleware, so it is constantly being updated according to the changes in operating systems. For example, earlier we had older versions of Ubuntu, so the ROS versions which was released during that time were calibrated according to those versions of Ubuntu. But now the latest version of, but now we have operating systems, we have newer Ubuntu versions like Ubuntu 22.04, Ubuntu 24.04, Ubuntu 25. So now the recent versions of ROS2, I would say, are calibrated according to these operating systems. So first we will understand what are different distributions of ROS2. What are different distributions of ROS2 and which distribution we should install. First, we will understand what are different distributions of ROS2. Let me erase these things. All right. So now we will understand the various distributions which are available. Distributions. Each distribution of ROS2 is paired with a specific version of Ubuntu. For example, ROS to Jazzy is paired with Ubuntu 24.04 and ROS to Humble is paired with Ubuntu 22.04. So which means ROS to Humble. These are various distributions, Jazzy, Humble. These are various distributions of ROS 2. You have also have versions like ROS 2 Iron, something like those, which are more older versions. Currently, the most commonly used versions in the ROS industry are, the most commonly used one is Humble, and the second most commonly used one is ROS 2 Jazzy. This version was released in 2025, last year only, so it is a relatively new version. This was released earlier in, I think, 2024 or 2023, something like that. As far as I remember, it was released in 2024. Mhm. So now if you have dual booted your system with Ubuntu 22.04, then you have to install ROS to Humble. And if you have dual booted Ubuntu 24.04, then you will have to install ROS to Jazzy. Now we will visit the official documentation site of ROS to know more about these distributions. Let's go. You can, if you are watching this video, then I would recommend you to use the split screen feature of Chrome and open a fresh tab with this video side by side, so you can also search and see what I am seeing. So search here ROS to distributions. Search on your browser ROS to distributions. You will see this link, ROS docs.ros.org. This is the official ROS 2 documentation, and as you can see, the first link is distributions ROS 2 documentation. Just click here, distributions, in the distributions ROS 2 documentation site, and it is just undergoing a bot check. Now see, these are the various versions, various distributions which have, or as you can see here, a ROS 2 distribution is defined as a versioned set of ROS packages. They are akin to Linux distributions. As I said, that our particular ROS distribution is paired with a specific version of Ubuntu. The purpose of ROS 2 here, let's skip this fluff and focus here. These are the various versions which we have. As you can see, this is the oldest version, alpha 1 dash alpha 1. Then in July 2017, beta 1 was released. Then in September 2017, beta 2 was released. In December 2017, beta 3 was released. And in December 2018, Ardent Apollon was released. These are very older versions, so you should not focus on these. The two most widely used versions currently are this Jazzy Jalisco. I was wrong about here. The Jazzy Jalisco has been released in 2024, not 2025. So these are the two most popular versions currently in use: the Jazzy Jalisco and Humble Haskell. Jazzy Jalisco and Humble Haskell. Humble Haskell was released in 2022. Jazzy Jalisco was released in 2024. Now there is something that you should know. For example, whenever the open source robotics foundation, or I can say Open Robotics, which is the company behind ROS 2, makes new distributions, then basically two types of distributions are released. One type of distribution, one is a long-term one is a distribution which has a long-term support. For example, as you can see, the support of Jazzy Jalisco is from 2024 to 2029, which means till 2029 this Jazzy Jalisco will be updated accordingly, but after May 2029 no further updates will be issued for this distribution, ROS to Jazzy Jalisco. And as you can say, the start date for ROS to Humble is 2022, and updates will be processed till 2027. After 2027, no further updates will be released for this particular distribution. As you can see, this is Iron Irvini. The support for Iron in Irvini is only for approximately 1.5 years, from May to December 2024. So Iron Irvini is a, you should say, a distribution with short-term support, while Jazzy Jalisco, Humble Haskell, are the distributions which are having long-term support. As you can see, Humble Haskell has a support for 5 years from 2027 to from 2022 to 2027, and Jazzy Jalisco has also support for 5 years from 2024 to 2029. The latest version, which is Lyrical Luth, has a support from 2026 to 2031. So this is the most latest version, and it is paired with the most latest version of Ubuntu, which I think is Ubuntu 25. So you can also install this one if you have Ubuntu 2025, but I would recommend either Jazzy Jalisco or Humble. Why I am not recommending this one? Because Lyrical Luth is relatively a new distribution, and it does not have a wide community support like Jazzy Jalisco or Humble Haskell. So if you face an error, you will likely get less answers related to that error on search engines like Google or whatever you are using, because it is basically released, as you can see, the date is May 22. So it was basically released May, June. Today, not even 1 month has passed for Lyrical Truth. After Lyrical Truth has been released, so it has a lesser community support. Meanwhile, Jazzy Jalisco and Humble Haskell have more matured community support, because Jazzy Jalisco was released 2 months ago, and this Humble Haskell was released 2 years ago, and this Humble Haskell was released 4 years ago. So I would recommend installing either Jazzy Jalisco or Humble Haskell. If you have Ubuntu 22.04, then Humble Haskell is preferred, and if you have 24.04, then Jazzy Jalisco is preferred. Now let's see various the Ubuntu versions that we have currently. Ubuntu releases. See, the latest version which has been released is Resolute Raccoon, which is Ubuntu 26. So I think this the latest distribution, which is Lyrical Luth, might be paired with Ubuntu 26, and then the ROS2 Jazzy is paired with this version, which is Ubuntu 24.04. ROS2 Humble is paired with this version, which is Ubuntu 22.04 Jammy Jellyfish. ROS2 Jazzy can be used with Noble Numbat, and Ubuntu and the Lyrical Luth distribution can be used with Ubuntu 26.04. These distributions which have long-term support are called LTS, long-term support versions. Here EOL, you can see EOL means end of life. End of life means after this date, this particular distribution won't have any new updates coming up. That doesn't mean that you cannot use this distribution, but it does mean that after this date you won't have any new versions coming up for this distribution or any new updates. So it is so for example, if you have Jazzy Jalisco, then updates will be coming up till 2029. After 2029 you can migrate to the newest version, which will be released in either 2028 or 2029. So this is all about ROS2 distributions and Ubuntu releases that you should know. Do follow. I will share the link of this video. Dual boot your video accordingly by following all the instructions which are given, and then install your preferred ROS2 distribution. For example, let's suppose you have dual booted your system with Ubuntu 24.04. If you have dual booted your system with Ubuntu 20, then search ROS2 Jazzy installation, because since you have Ubuntu 24.04, then you have to install ROS2 Jazzy. After searching ROS2 Jazzy installation, click on this first link, installation ROS2 documentation, Jazzy documentation. This is the documentation for the Jazzy distribution of ROS2. After clicking on this link, now I am telling you how you can install a distribution of ROS2. See, as stated here, this ROS2 distribution will work on Ubuntu Linux Noble Numbat 24.04 version. So click after you have opened this website, click in deb packages, not binary archive. I would recommend deb packages. As you can see, it is the recommended installation method. Click on deb packages. After clicking on deb packages, go down and one by one run all commands. Do not run all these commands at once. First select this command and then copy it, then run on your terminal here. All right, and this is your, by default you will be having this terminal. So you have to basically copy paste all these commands one by one. First, here is your terminal. First, copy paste this command on your terminal. Then second command. Then the third one. Then the fourth one. Then the fifth one. Then the sixth one. And and then follow all the instructions written on this page. Copy paste all the commands. Follow all the instructions. These all the commands from top to bottom. Copy paste all these commands. All these commands. Install ROS2. All these commands you have to copy paste one by one, and then your ROS2 will be installed. And you should pay attention in one part here. So as you can see, these are all some commands which you have to copy paste. Here a warning is stated. Read also this carefully and accordingly copy paste all the commands. All right. See, this was the version I said that you should pay attention to. Here, two methods are there: desktop install, ROS always demos tutorials, and the second method of installation is ROS base installed. Base install. So after you have copied commands till this one, make sure you installed using the desktop install method. Means run this command. This one. After you have ran all the previous commands, run this one. If you will run this command, then the visualization tools like RWays, demos, and tutorials, these all won't be installed. So only the basic things, basic communication libraries, DDS packages will be installed, but no GUI tools will be installed. After when we when we will run advanced ROS, then we will also need some GUI tools. GUI tools means graphical user interface tools. So you have to run this command after you have run all the previous ones. So copy and paste these commands one by, and your ROS will be installed. To check whether your ROS is installed or not, first, you have to source your distribution. I will talk about how you can set up your. First, you have to source your distribution. As you can see, this command. This command is the command used for sourcing our distribution. Huh? So we have to run source slash opt slash ROS slash jazzy slash setup.bash, and we will run then ROS2. After running this, after sourcing our ROS2 underlay, we will run ROS2. As you can see, if you are getting this information displayed, that means your ROS2 is successfully installed and sourced on your terminal. Let's suppose you have Ubuntu 22.04 and you do not have Ubuntu 24.04. Then you have to install ROS2 Humble. In that case, just remove Jazzy and search ROS2 Humble installation. You will get the documentation for ROS2 Humble installation. Click on it. As you can see, here also as you can see here, it is clearly stated that this version is meant primarily for Jammy Jellyfish, which is Ubuntu 22.04. Click on dev packages, and then again you have to do the same process. Copy paste all the commands from starting to end, from here to here, all the commands till the end. Here, for example, till here, copy paste all the commands till here. This will install ROS2. Then you can follow some these commands. These are some basic tutorials which you can follow if you want, or not if you want, because I will be explaining all these things in the further videos. The first step is dual booting with Ubuntu. The second step is installing ROS, and the third step is verifying whether ROS is installed or not. To verify, just use this source commands to source your ROS2 underlay, and after sourcing, for example, after sourcing, just type ROS2, and if you are getting this information like this displayed, then your ROS2 is properly sourced, so properly working and sourced. So if you are installing Humble, then you can visit the Humble documentation, and if you are on Ubuntu 24.04 and you are installing Jazzy, then you can visit the Jazzy documentation. If you are installing some another version, for example Lyrical Luth, then you can simply visit the installation of the documentation of that distribution, Lyrical Luth. Here is the documentation of Lyrical Luth. you can just visit dep packages, and again the steps for installation is same for every distribution. You have to just copy paste and run these commands one by one, and then you have to at the end in this setup environment section you can verify whether your distribution is installed or not. So these are the first two steps which you have to follow. The first you have to do what I am summarizing here, what I have discussed just now. First, dual boot your system with Linux. Dual boot with Linux. Either choose Ubuntu 24.04 or Ubuntu 22.04. If you install this one, then you can use ROS2 Jazzy. And if you install this one, then you can reuse ROS2 Humble. Dual boot. The second step is install ROS2. Install ROS2 by visiting the documentation site of your distribution. Visit the official ROS2 documentation site and copy paste the commands one by one. Then check whether ROS2 is installed or not. Check installation. To check installation, you have to first source your ROS2 underlay, and then you have to run the ROS2 command to check whether your ROS2 is installed or not. The command to source your ROS2 underlay is already given in your documentation site of your respective distribution. For example, this is the documentation site of Lyrical distribution. So if I will go in the section of setup environment, then this is the command to source our ROS2 underlay. What do I mean by ROS2 underlay? I will explain it in upcoming videos. Just you copy paste this command and your ROS2 underlay will be sourced. Then run ROS2 in your terminal. If you are getting the output which I showed you earlier, if that output is displayed, that means your ROS2 is successfully installed. So first you have to follow all these steps in the same order from top to bottom. If you have already dual booted your system with either this or this Ubuntu version, then you can continue following second step. This is the first step that you should follow. This is the second one, and this is the third one. If you have completed this, or if you have some another Ubuntu version apart from 24.04 or 22.04, then check the corresponding ROS2 distribution paired with your Ubuntu version and install that distribution by visiting the documentation site of that distribution. So these three steps you must follow, and after you have installed ROS2, we can continue learning the concepts of ROS2 from our next video. This is the introduction and onboarding guide for ROS2, and it is the first video, introduction and onboarding guide for ROS2. Guide for ROS2. So first follow all these steps and get your ROS installed. If you are getting some error while installing ROS, then you can simply paste that error on ChatGPT, or you can search it on Google, because since many people have installed ROS before you, so most probably all the errors have been documented earlier. So you will find answers on websites like Stack Overflow for your particular error. So follow all this. I will share the video for this video which tells you how to dual boot your system in the link of in the description of my video, and your ROS2 can be installed by visiting the corresponding documentation site. then you have to check the installation for your ROS2 system. This is all that you should do for today's video. From the next video, we will start covering various ROS2 concepts. So thank you everyone.